Summer, I learned to listen to the house. The walls began to keep time the way old clocks keep secrets. The house stood at the edge of the village like a tired witness, painted with the pale patience of faded seashells and rain. It wore its weather as if it were a shawl frayed at the cuffs, but still warm enough to wrap a body against the memory of a chill day. I was a boy then, wide-eyed with the heat, and with the stubborn certainty that a place could tell me what I needed to know if I would only listen long enough. My sister, Mira, wanted to hear the stories of houses the way other children wanted to hear fairy tales. She believed that houses remembered the names of their inhabitants the way rivers remember the names of bridges. I believed, or pretended to, that I did not. Our street ended in a cul-de-sac where the river found the road again and again, as if it were always trying to slip through a seam in the earth. The old house loomed there with its windows like patient eyes, polished by the years and the salt air. It had a door that never seemed quite sturdy, an old thing that sighed when the wind rose, and creaked so that you could swear it spoke in a voice only the very old and very lonely would understand. Mira, with her wild hair and a habit of putting her small, earnest hands on every doorknob she found, would tell me, in that conspirator's whisper young girls learn for fun, that the house wanted us to stay if we would only listen. We spent the summer stages of our childhood along the house's perimeters. The kitchen with its humming coal stove that never seemed to heat evenly. The back stairs that led to a pantry where I learned to count the echoes. The cellar where Mira would point to a crack in the stone and say, "That's where the old men kept their secrets." And the attic where a single trunk stood like a sleepwalker's suitcase, containing clothes that did not belong to any one of us, but to a life we had only begun to imagine. The house's breath was in the kettle's sigh, in the pantry's dust, in the way the wind found the slats in the shutters and turned them into a language Mira swore we were losing if we blinked too slowly. It began with a small, almost unremarkable thing, a sound that shouldn't exist in a house as quiet and tired as ours. It was the metallic tapping of something against the wall behind the pantry. Just after twilight, not the wind, not the rain. Mira heard it first, of course. She claimed it was a creature the house kept in its bones. A creature with a clock for a heart that tapped to tell you when to listen again. I laughed and told her it was nothing, just the house being old and bored. But in the days that followed, the tapping grew steadier, more purposeful, like a hand rapping softly on a door you didn't know you possessed. The house's unease wore the colour of lemon rinds and old coins. The dining room, always the room we visited most often for me, and sometimes the whispers came, not loud enough to frighten us, but enough to make the hairs on your arms gather in neat, invisible orders. The whispers were not voices, not exactly. They were the architecture speaking in a language of texture and memory. If you pressed your hand to the wall in the hall, the plaster would warm and remember your skin. The old paper's scent would rise, and your own scent would vanish into a chorus of the house's old stories. It was as if the walls were listening not to us, but for us, to hear the names we would one day carry as our own, to confirm that we would be missed when we left. We learned to listen back, to quiet the world outside so keenly that the room would tell us when to stop speaking and start listening again. The summer wore on with the soft cruelty of a sea that does not hurry but never forgets. Mira grew certain that the house knew our names and would call to us by them when we most needed to hear them spoken aloud. She kept a notebook, A little ragged thing with a cover glued with photographs of the river, the hedges, and the door that wouldn't stay closed on windy nights. In that notebook, she drew the doorway to the attic that did not exist in a practical sense, but existed in every other sense you could imagine, an opening between a grandmother's breath and a child's memory. She swore that if we listened closely enough, the attic would answer us with a soft rattle of a latch, as if someone was letting the house remember us again for the first time. I know now that it wasn't the attic that remembered us at all, but the house recognizing our coming and going in the only way it could, by making us part of it, by turning our names into a weather pattern that would drift through the walls and stay a little after we had left. When Mira vanished from the village, it did not feel sudden to me. It felt inevitable, as if the house had prepared for it in some quiet ritual known only to the old stones and the salt-scented wood. It was as if leaving was the natural course, and we, two reckless children, had merely accelerated it. Some days I still hear her laughter in the long corridors, when the house remembers laughter more honestly than the hands of adults ever could. I stayed, awkwardly old, once I had grown. I stayed because I could not bear to admit that I believed the house could be right about something I could not dare to trust. I stayed because the old house never asked me to leave. It only waited, patient as lullabies, to see if I would ever understand that my place was not outside its doors, but inside its memory. Time did not move here in the ordinary way. It glided, a slow and careful drift, through rooms that rearranged themselves when you turned away. The clock in the hallway, an oppressive, fat thing with a face like a small moon, began to misdeclare the hours, sometimes by hours, sometimes by days. It would strike 3 in the afternoon and 3 in the morning at once, as if to remind me that I had forgotten how to count time the way a child does. The first explicit sign of something truly other came not as a fear, but as a realization. The house began to present me with a choice I did not know I was making. Mira's notebook, which I had kept for years, revealed an entry I had not yet understood, a request sewn in Mira's careful handwriting, a plea tucked in the margin of a drawing of the attic, a whisper to the walls that I had not dared to hear. It said, in effect, that the house could hold more than memory. It could hold truth, the way a chest holds a secret you never dared reveal to the daylight. The truth arrived on a late autumn night when the rain came down in sheets and the river spoke with a voice of coins spilling into a well. I woke to the sound of someone stepping